Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to see you again on my channel. Today, we continue the emotional journey in the love story between the single mother Liha and police officer Hùng. This isn't just an ordinary romance, but a chronicle of struggles between a painful past, a challenging present, and an uncertain future. In this episode, things become more complicated than ever. The bond between Liha and Hùng seemed to have found its footing, yet a series of unexpected events strikes. An ex suddenly returns, bringing with them a long-buried secret. What once appeared to be minor misunderstandings now widen into an unbridgeable gap. Unanswered questions begin to cut deeply into the trust between them. Liha stands before a choice, to forgive or to walk away. Hùng must confront his own past, his responsibilities and wounds that have yet to heal. Their love is tested by the most ordinary yet powerful forces: trust, patience, and sacrifice. Today's episode not only leaves viewers breathless with emotional climaxes, but also raises profound questions. Is love strong enough to overcome deep wounds? Can a woman who has endured so much loss open her heart once again to embrace happiness? And can a man who's long lived by reason find the courage to hold on to the one he loves amidst the storm? Stay tuned until the end of the video so you don't miss a single moment, because each second carries a deep message about love, choices, and human resilience in the face of life's toughest trials. After a long time wandering aimlessly, like a man lost in the fog clinging to the faint hope that Liha was still alive, Diep finally stumbled upon a precious lead. Faint traces and uncertain rumors led him to a remote countryside, where a shabby little house stood alone amid desolate fields. And there, he found her. Liha, the woman who once burned with passion and strength, now lived in seclusion under the roof of a simple farming couple. She was no longer the same. Her face, her voice, still familiar, but her eyes, once filled with life and longing, now held only silence and emptiness. She had lost her memory. She didn't recognize him. No look of surprise. No rush of emotion. To her, he was a stranger. A man who appeared out of nowhere, speaking confusing things about a past, a life she didn't remember, couldn't remember. Diep tried to explain. He recounted memories, the days they spent side by side. He spoke of her laughter, of the way she held her baby in her arms and sang him to sleep. But to her, it was all just echoes from a past she no longer connected to. She looked at him with the polite detachment one might give a passerby, curious, but distant. Then things worsened. The farmer's wife began to grow suspicious. Despite their sympathy, they were still strangers to Liha, and they couldn't hand her over to a man with no documents, no proof, only stories. They feared Diep might be someone taking advantage, or worse, trying to drag her back into a troubled past she had tried to escape. Diep was furious. But then he realized, he couldn't blame them. He was the only one who knew who Liha truly was, while to the world, she now existed inside a shattered mirror, where every reflection of her past came back distorted and unrecognizable. Unable to convince them, unable to reach her heart, Diep had no choice but to leave. Yet before stepping out that fragile house, he turned, looked straight into her still, unreadable eyes, and spoke with unwavering belief. "I will come back. Next time, I won't come alone. I'll bring someone you love. And I'll bring your son." That child, Tony, was only 2 years old. He had his mother's eyes and his father's smile. He was their last thread of hope, the bond that could pull a lost soul back from oblivion. Diep believed, if anything could break through the walls of her memory, it was the warmth of a mother's love, and the gaze of the man who once loved Liha with all his heart. Right after leaving the house where he found Liha, Diep didn't rest for even a second. Through the dark of night, he sped down the road as if racing against time, desperate to share the news. For him, this wasn't just good news, it was the closing chapter of long, weary days suspended between hope and despair. It was the last chance to bring Lythica back to her true life. When he stepped into the room where Hung was sitting alone, eyes dull and lifeless, Du didn't speak in circles. He simply gasped for breath, then delivered each word with quiet intensity. I found her. Just 4 words. But they hit like thunder in a clear sky, a gust of wind breaking through the suffocating cloud of despair that had wrapped around Hung for so long. In that moment, Hung seemed to awaken from a daze. He shot up from his chair, eyes wide, lips trembling as if afraid to believe what he had just heard. Where? Is she okay? She's alive. But, she might have lost her memory. Hung asked no more. He didn't need reasons or details. She's alive was enough. His eyes welled up with tears, yet for the first time in what felt like forever, they shimmered with life. That very night, without packing a bag, without informing anyone, Hung and Du rushed off, like 2 men reborn after a near-death slumber. They drove for hundreds of kilometers in silence. Hung gripped the steering wheel tightly, eyes fixed ahead as if he could pierce the darkness to see the one he loved waiting. His heart was a storm of emotion, joy, anxiety, anticipation, and fear. He feared she wouldn't recognize him. That she would look at him with the eyes of a stranger. But still, he went, because not going would mean losing himself completely. By the time they arrived, dawn had just begun to break. The first golden rays lit up the moss-covered rooftop of the small house in the middle of an endless field, casting a soft, cold glow. Hung stepped out, legs trembling, not from exhaustion, but from overwhelming emotion. And then, the door opened. Lythica stood on the porch, holding a piece of cloth in her hands, eyes gazing into the distance as if searching for something unnamed. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders, her figure thinner, more fragile than before. She looked worn down. But the moment Hung saw her, he knew, it was her. The woman he had loved with every beautiful year of his life. Unable to contain himself, Hung rushed forward and pulled her into a familiar embrace. His voice choked with emotion. "Ca, it's me, it's Hung. I've searched for you all this time." But Lythica stood still. She didn't return his embrace. She didn't cry. There was no emotional pause, no rush of recognition that Hung had long imagined. Instead, she slowly stepped back, gently slipping out of his arms. Her eyes looked at him, not with fear, but with distance. And then, in a voice as soft and cold as morning dew, she asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know you." Her words landed like an arrow through Hung's heart. He froze. His heart clenched. She didn't recognize him. All the memories, the laughter, the sleepless nights they once shared, now existed only in his mind. To her, he was a stranger, saying incomprehensible things, with teary eyes and a trembling voice. Hung clenched his jaw to keep from crying. He forced a faint smile, the smile of a man familiar with pain, but still believing in miracles. He didn't blame her. How could he? She didn't choose to forget him. She had lost her memory. And the fact that she was still alive, that alone was already a precious gift. After what felt like a century of silence, Hung turned to Du and gave a gentle nod. He understood, this wasn't the time to push. She needed time. And he would give it to her. "I won't force you to remember. But I'll be here, every day. And I'll bring Tony, our son. He misses you so much." Then, Hung quietly walked away. No anger. No cursing fate. But from behind, his figure, thin yet steadfast, seemed to say to the world, "Even if you forget me, I'll fall in love with you all over again. After the emotional yet disheartening encounter with Hoai, Hung returned home carrying a heavy heart. He didn't utter a word throughout the long drive back. His hands clutched the steering wheel, but his mind drifted far away. Through the misted window, his eyes traced every tree, every bumpy road, trying to imprint the surroundings where she now lived into his heart, as if holding on to her presence, even if only in memory. Seeing Hoai alive, standing right before him, even if she didn't speak his name, didn't recognize him, was still the greatest gift he could have asked for. He had once prepared himself for the worst, a photo in a forensic file, a bloodstain at a crime scene. But what he received, though painful, was still hope. And for someone like Hung, hope was enough to carry on. Yet before his mind could even settle, before the ache in his chest could begin to ease, his phone rang. The screen displayed a familiar internal number from the station. His superior's voice came through, urgent, serious, and leaving no room for hesitation. Hung, there's a new development in the Hoai case. Come back to the station immediately. This is far more serious than we thought. No questions. No guesses. Hung's instincts as a police officer made him turn the car around at once. But his heart churned with unease. He had considered countless suspects, a crime lord, a shadowy enemy, a jealous ex-lover, but never, not once, had his mind dared to entertain the most brutal possibility, family. When he entered the emergency meeting room, the air was thick. His colleagues avoided his gaze. A strange silence loomed over the once familiar space. Then his superior, a man who had worked alongside him for years, placed a thick case file on the table, his eyes resolute, yet full of hesitation. Hung, what I'm about to say won't be easy. But you need to hear it. Hung barely reacted. The person behind the entire plan to abduct, detain, and harm Hoai is your mother. The room shattered around him. A wave of invisible force slammed into Hung's chest. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't believe. Couldn't understand. In that instant, his whole world collapsed. The words, your mother, sliced through him like a cold blade, tearing into a heart already broken. The woman he thought could never do wrong. The one who raised him on stories of morality, law, and righteousness. The same woman who had told him time and again, as a police officer, you must have the courage to stand for the truth, even if it hurts you. And yet, she was the one who ordered the death of the woman he loved. His superior didn't let him spiral too deep. He opened the file, presenting piece by piece, recorded phone calls with hired gang members, disguised bank transactions, surveillance footage from secret meetings. Everything matched. Every detail confirmed a horrifying truth: Mrs. Hang, his biological mother, was the mastermind. The motive remained unclear. Perhaps a deep-seated grudge against Hoai. Perhaps blind opposition to his relationship. Or worse, an attempt to cover up something far darker. But one fact was undeniable: she had fled. Her last known location was near the northern border. She was now officially wanted nationwide. Hung, his superior's voice softened, like a father speaking to his son, from this moment on, you're no longer allowed to participate in this investigation. The entire case will be transferred to Lieutenant Luong. This isn't just protocol to ensure objectivity, it's to protect you. I know, this is a devastating blow. But we have no choice. Hung said nothing. His fists clenched beneath the table, knuckles white. His eyes, bloodshot since the start, now turned cold. No more emotion. No more anger. Just a terrifying void, like his soul was retreating into silence. He stood up. Bowed his head. No words of thanks. No protest. No plea to stay. He quietly took the file, turned, and walked out of the room that had been his home, his justice, his life, for so many years. Each step he took felt like crossing an invisible line, where reason must face blood ties, where justice must confront the heart. And in that moment, a single question echoed within him, drilling into his mind. If one day his mother were caught and brought to justice, would he have the courage to face her? To look into her eyes and ask, "Why, Mother? Why did you choose this path?" Learning the truth, that his own mother, the woman he had respected his entire life, was the one behind the plot to harm the woman he loved, felt like the sky had collapsed beneath Hung's feet. He once thought he had endured the worst pain imaginable, when Lythica went missing, when he faced life-or-death moments during investigations. But no, the deepest pain wasn't loss, it was betrayal from the one tied to him by blood. Hung couldn't believe it. His mother, though always disapproving of his relationship with Lythica, had always carried herself with poise and pride. The woman who had taught him to live with integrity could really be the mastermind behind such cruelty? Not just hiring thugs to abduct her, but orchestrating an entire facade to cover up the crime, then vanishing without a trace? It all felt like a nightmare with no end. And then, just as Hung returned home, utterly drained, before he could even set down his bag or catch his breath, the front door flung open, revealing 3 unfamiliar men. Their faces were grim, their posture intimidating, and their eyes held no pretense of kindness. Without a greeting, the man in the center pulled out a stack of papers. "You're Mrs. Hang's son, right? We're here to collect a debt." Hung had no time to react before another man threw a pile of documents onto the table, loan contracts, asset pledges, all bearing his mother's name. The amount listed left him stunned. A colossal debt, far beyond anything he could have imagined, let alone repay. "She borrowed it to pay some of our brothers to do a job. But now the plan blew up, and she ran. No money returned. Her properties? All mortgaged. So, if you don't pay up, we'll take back in other ways." Hung clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. His heart ached again, not from their threats, but from the brutal truth in their words. His mother hadn't just betrayed his trust, she was willing to sacrifice everything, her home, her dignity, even his future, just to cover up her crimes. She had used every resource, money, influence, connections, to hire thugs, instructing them to make it clean, and most importantly, never mention her name. She thought she could erase every trace. She believed that if Lythica simply disappeared, everything would return to normal. But she was wrong. The truth can never stay buried forever. And now that the truth had surfaced, she had vanished, fled deep into the northern border regions, where the authorities were desperately following every trace to bring her to justice. Hung stood in what was once a warm home, now cold and empty. The gray walls seemed to close in around him. He felt abandoned in his own life. No family. No trust. No place to return to. Worse than betrayal was helplessness. Helpless, because he couldn't stop it from happening. Helpless, because the one who caused this was his mother. And most of all, helpless with a guilt he couldn't name, toward Lythica and their little son, Tony. He felt like he had failed them. Failed to protect the woman he loved. Failed to preserve a home for the child who hadn't even had a chance to understand what happiness meant. To the outside world, he was still a police officer, a symbol of justice, of protection. But deep inside, Hung knew, he had lost everything. And then, he collapsed to the floor. For the first time in his life, he let his tears fall, not from pain, but from the sheer weight of helplessness. Just when Hung thought the shock about his mother was the worst blow life could deal him, he realized life wasn't done yet. The days that followed were an unrelenting storm. Every sorrow, every burden, every consequence of a sin he never committed, came crashing down on him like endless waves, never letting him breathe. Debt, once just cold numbers on a piece of paper, had now taken shape, pressing in on his life with suffocating weight. The debt collectors didn't just come once. They returned, this time more aggressive, colder, and armed with official foreclosure documents. His mother had mortgaged the entire family estate, the house, the land, every last asset they had built over decades, just to silence the gang she hired, hoping her crimes would stay buried forever. Hung had no choice. With tears in his eyes, he signed the deed to the house, the last thing that connected him to his childhood, to the days when he was still simply a son. The land his father had toiled over for years. The room where he once learned to play guitar, where his mother used to comb his hair when he was little. Now, none of it belonged to him anymore. That evening, the sky was heavy and overcast, just like the weight in Hung's chest. He packed in silence. No one came to help. No one asked questions. He stuffed what he could into cardboard boxes. A dusty family photo on top of the wardrobe seemed to cut deeper than anything else. When he sealed the last box, he paused, glanced around the now empty house, and felt utterly powerless. Years as a police officer, he never feared danger or death, but now, he crumbled under the truth of his own family. He hadn't just lost a house. He had lost a place to return to. He had lost the reason to hold his head high. But what hurt most wasn't the mountain of debt his mother left behind. Not the house being seized. It was the guilt toward Lythica. Every time he thought of her, of the distant, unfamiliar look in her eyes the day they met again, he felt like something inside him was being crushed. He wanted to be there for her. To say he was sorry. To hold her and promise that it was all over. But how could he? How could he face her, when it was his own flesh and blood who had caused her to lose her memories, to live in darkness for months? And now, as she wandered the fragile space between memory and present, he had nothing to offer, just empty hands, and a truth that could never be forgiven. Maybe, it was best not to see her again. Hung quietly picked up his bag and walked out of the house, once called home, like a man in exile. He didn't know where he would go. He only knew that from this moment on, he was no longer a man of the past. No longer Mrs. Hang's dutiful son. No longer Lythica's lover. No longer the police officer who once bore the mission of justice. Now, he was just a man, carrying a debt that could never be repaid. After days of silently enduring everything alone, Hung finally made the decision to tell the truth. He sought out Du, the friend, the brother who had stood by his side through every moment of searching for Lythica. He no longer had the strength to hide, no reason to avoid it. Looking Du straight in the eyes, Hung revealed everything, from the investigation, the evidence, to the most devastating truth: his biological mother was behind it all. Du froze. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His expression darkened, and his fists clenched tightly. His breathing turned sharp, his eyes filled with rage. He had once vowed, whoever was responsible for what Lythica had suffered, he would never forgive them. But he never imagined, it would be the mother of the friend he trusted most. The only family Hung had left. For a moment, Du wanted to yell, to lash out. But he held it back. Because when he looked into Hung's sorrow-filled eyes, he realized, the man sitting before him was a victim too. Hung didn't choose his mother. He didn't mastermind any of this. He had lost everything. And now, all he had left, was guilt. Du took a deep breath. His voice was low, raspy from holding in too much. I can't forgive the one who did this to CA. But I know it wasn't you. I know you're living in hell. And I'm not here to make it worse. The two men sat in silence. No more words. None were needed. They faced each other in a quiet room, with only the wind rustling through the window, turning a page on the desk, as if flipping through the painful chapters of the past. After a long pause, Du spoke again. There's something you need to know. Tony, he's my biological son. Hung froze. Though he had suspected it for some time, hearing it confirmed still struck a painful chord. CA, she hid it from me. And I don't blame her. But now, with her memory still unclear, and everything so unstable, I can't leave my son around you. Not like this. I want to bring them both back, to care for them myself. Hung stayed quiet for a while, then slowly shook his head. Not now. CA doesn't remember anything yet. Changing her surroundings suddenly could confuse her even more. If we force it, it might backfire. I've thought about this a lot, and maybe keeping things the way they are is best. Du nodded. He had considered that too. After careful discussion, they agreed, CA would remain at the home of the kind farming family, the only place she had come to feel safe after losing her memory. A quiet, peaceful setting, far from the chaos of her past, and the only place she wouldn't be mentally shaken. But this time, Tony would be brought there. Not as someone's son, but simply as a child in need of his mother. That natural bond might stir something inside her, awaken lost memories. So she wouldn't feel alone. So each day, she'd have a pair of innocent eyes watching her. A small hand reaching for hers, like a thread pulling her back to herself. They also agreed to provide regular financial support to the farmer and his mother, both as a gesture of gratitude and to ensure that CA received the best possible care. Quietly. Without disturbance. Just quietly protecting her, from afar. Before leaving, Du looked at Hung for a long moment. His gaze no longer sharp with anger, but filled with thought. Don't turn yourself into the villain. You didn't cause this. But if you still want to make it right, then here's your chance. Don't stand on the sidelines anymore. Hung didn't reply. But his eyes, red and weary, shone faintly with something not seen in a long time. Hope. To give CA peace of mind to recover, far from chaos, and to allow Hung time to deal with the personal storm weighing down on him, both he and Du finally agreed to let her remain where she had been staying all along, the modest home of a kind-hearted farming mother and son. There were no advanced medical machines, no doctors, no medical records, but what CA had there was something far more important, peace. A place where no one knew her past, where there were no curious stares or pitying glances, no one speaking of memories she couldn't grasp. Just earth, sky, and warm, quiet people. Day by day, she began to settle into the gentle rhythm of rural life. She no longer flinched at every unfamiliar sound. The haunting dreams slowly faded. Instead came serene mornings tending to the garden with the woman of the house, watering vegetables, trimming leaves. Afternoons spent drying corn, bundling brooms, listening to the wind rustling through the loofah vines behind the house. She even smiled at the chickens scurrying at her feet, or felt her heart ease as the scent of wood smoke mingled with the smell of freshly cooked rice. These seemingly trivial things became healing medicine for her soul, filling the cracks in her memory with warmth, like sunlight seeping through old wounds. Then, one day, Tony arrived. Du brought the boy, along with a small backpack and a tender heart eager to find his mom. The moment he saw her, he ran straight toward her, hugging her leg, eyes wide and sparkling with joy and nervous hope. Mommy. Lythica froze. Her body stiffened. She had never been called mom before. That single word, from a child's lips, struck her heart not with reason, but instinct. Something deep within her stirred, trembled, and rose like a tide. Tony didn't need confirmation. He acted as if he had lived there forever, talking, laughing, holding her hand. At first, she was hesitant. But just days later, watching him sleep soundly in her lap, his small hand tightly clutching hers even in dreams, an invisible thread had begun to reconnect. No explanations. No clarity. Just a feeling of love, quietly taking root. Tony stayed. The little house now echoed with a child's laughter, an extra bowl at every meal, a small shadow trailing after the older woman in the garden, or clinging to his mother near the stove. The woman of the house welcomed Tony like her own, offering him the gentle care of a mother who once lost her own child in a tragic accident. Her only son, a quiet, reserved young man, was always there in the background of Lythica's daily life. He was a man of few words, but always present. When she slipped on wet soil, he caught her. When Tony ran out into the rain, he brought the boy back, wrapping them both in a dry towel. When she held the hoe wrong, he didn't laugh, he simply guided her hand with his own. At first, she was cautious. She had once feared men. But he never stepped too close. Never asked about her past. Never pressured her future. He was simply there, just enough, quiet, kind. And that silence slowly softened her heart. Beneath the thatched roof in golden afternoon light, she would sit picking vegetables while Tony played beside her, and the young man shaved bamboo to make broom handles. No one spoke much, but no one felt anything was missing. The three of them, without titles, without roles, lived like a family. There was the sound of the hearth, of buzzing mosquitoes, of wind, of a child's laughter. And somehow, that was enough, for an empty soul to find its place again. Lythica still hadn't remembered who she was. But she knew one thing, she was being loved. Quietly. Without demands. Just through small gestures, a morning where sunlight streamed through the window, someone asking, "Have you had breakfast yet?" A child's eyes looking up at her like she was his whole world, and a man who never spoke of love, but was always quietly there, watching over her. She didn't rush to recover her past. Because the present was gentle enough to keep living. The case remains unresolved. The mastermind is still hiding somewhere along the mist-shrouded border, carrying a guilt that no amount of money can ever erase. Hung's mother, a woman once regarded as the embodiment of discipline, prestige, and power, is now at the top of the national wanted list. The hunt tightens day by day. The question is no longer will she be caught, but rather, when she is, will she have the courage to face the crimes she committed? And Hung, after losing everything, his home, his honor, and even his faith and family, what fate awaits him now? The debts piling up are not just from banks or creditors, but from deep within his conscience. How can he repay the heaviest debt of all, the apology he owes Lythica, the woman who nearly lost her life because she loved him? And what about Lythica, after months of living nameless and quiet in the countryside? Now wrapped in the warmth of Tony, of the gentle farming family, and of the silent man who always protects her, will she truly want to return to the past? Or will she choose to stay and begin a new life, where memories may remain blurred, but love grows clearer with each passing day? Will her memory return? Will Hung and Lythica have another chance? Will justice be strong enough to bring the guilty to their knees before the truth? And can a shattered heart learn to love again? All these questions will begin to unfold in the next episode. Don't look away. Don't miss it. Because sometimes, the ending doesn't come from remembering, but from choosing. Join us in the next chapter, where past, present, and future collide, and every heart must find its way home.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người, chào mừng mọi người lại quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay mình tiếp tục đưa mọi người đến với câu chuyện tình yêu của mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng phần tiếp theo nha mọi người. Như mọi người cũng đã biết là ở tập trước thì mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca thì đã tỉnh lại. Tuy nhiên hiện tại cô đang bị mất trí nhớ và chưa có thể nhớ ra được. Trong tập này thì Hùng đã đưa Tony đến gặp Hoài Ca. Tuy nhiên trí nhớ của cô vẫn chưa hồi phục. Và trong tập này thì cũng có một điều vô cùng bất ngờ là Hùng đã tìm ra được người đứng sau tất cả mọi chuyện hại Hoài Ca, đó chính là mẹ của Hùng. Thì anh vô cùng bất ngờ và đau lòng. Ngoài ra thì mẹ của Hùng để mà đưa tiền cho bọn côn đồ đã hại Hoài Ca để giữ bí mật cho bà, thì bà đã vay một số tiền rất là lớn ở bọn xã hội đen cũng như là cầm cố ngôi nhà. Điều đó khiến Hùng phải rời ra khỏi nhà. Vậy thì diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào? Mời mọi người đón xem nhé.